Hey everyone, here with the Antique Book Collective, and today I'm getting to you guys with a fun little video that's a bit of a Bible study and not just about antique book selling, because guys, at the end of the day, Antique Book Collective is not just about selling books, it's about collecting them, restoring them, storing them, and studying them. So guys, this one right here is about the book of Exodus, and not just that, but it's about Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt. So guys, I am going through this amazing Bible commentary from 1835 in this awesome video right here. So it might not be the most exciting thing out here for all of you guys, but for those of you guys that want to learn a little bit more about it, I'll be going through it in this video. So right off the bat, guys, here's the title page to this book. You guys can pause if you want to study that a little bit more, but end of the day, it is commentary on the Bible, Old and New Testament. This one right here is just going through Genesis all the way through Job, which is quite a good chunk of the Bible, but again, it's from 1835, so it's a really old and honestly still beautiful books. But with all that said though, guys, I'm not going to be going through the entirety of Exodus. I'm just going to be focusing on one particular amazing part of this book, and that is actually right here. I have a fold out map of this book, and guys, I'm not going to hold it up for you guys to see the fold out map. I will be showing you photos of what I'm going through here, because that way you guys can actually look at it. So with that said though, I'm just going to scooch on to the left a little bit so you guys can have a little bit more room to view everything right there on my right, your left. I believe it's your left. But with that said though, guys, I'm just going to dive right on in on some of the interesting things about this particular map and some things that we've learned since then, since this was made, and all these sorts of things. So guys, right off the bat, I'm just going to show you a larger photo of the map, but I'd like to point out something interesting. So if you guys know anything about Egypt, so what we're looking at here is Egypt and Arabia. If you know anything about Egypt, you know there's something called the Suez Canal, but this one right here, guys, this map was actually made long before the Suez Canal actually was started. So the Suez Canal didn't officially get opened until I want to say the 1950s, and work didn't even start on it since the 1850s roughly. So this book here was made in 1835, so it's a little bit older, so that's why you don't have the Suez Canal going all the way through, but you do have some really cool things. There's lots of stuff about Egypt on the left side of this map that I'd love to go through, but it's not really the main focus of this. This one's just talking about Moses. I'm probably going to be going over, if you guys look a little closely on this one, there are a couple other trails besides what we're going over here with what Moses took. We have the one that Jacob took his family on, and Jacob, if you guys know, Jacob is Israel. He got his name changed because Jacob, no one wants to have their name be deceiver, so he got changed to Israel, which is a little bit more positive. But you have that, and you have a lot of other amazing little bits and pieces of just Bible history that you see in this map. However, there are some things that are quite interesting. So with that said, I'm just going to dive right on in. We're going to be going through some close-up shots of this map so we can really go through things. So first off, we have a close-up of the land of Goshen. So the land of Goshen, guys, that's where the Israelites, that's the land that they were given. It was very good farmland, so that's why Pharaoh, when the Israelites first got there, that's why Pharaoh gave them the land of Goshen. It was great for farming and particularly for raising up flocks. And Pharaoh, he knew that Jacob's people, Israel, he knew that they were good at having their flocks. They had all the sheep, all that sort of stuff, so they got the land of Goshen. It was a great land, very plentiful, but as time went on, eventually you had a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph, and when that happened, a lot of bad things happened to the Israelites. You had years and years of slavery, and then if you guys know Exodus, we got to the point where their cries rose up, and God heard their cries and responded, and he responded in the form of sending Moses to finally stand up to Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go. So with that said though, guys, so as you guys can see, we're starting here in Cairo. It's in a nice little cluster of all the cities with lots of little circles that all get all over the place, so it's a little hard to tell exactly which one's where, but if you guys know anything about Egyptian history, I'm sure you guys could figure it out on your own. Again, that's not really the focus of this thing. We're not going over just Egypt. We're going over the route that Moses took. But we could see that they immediately, as they left Egypt, they started heading south, which if you guys are looking at this map, if you know anything about anything, you know, well, south is not really the route that you should be going if you want to get out of there. However, we do see that it takes them through the land of Goshen, and they're going and they're going and they go through the mountains eventually. And if you guys watched the DreamWorks movie about the whole Moses story, you know it was very mountainous terrain, all that sort of stuff. You have lots of canyons, and you can see on this map even that it shows some of the different terrain issues there. And depending on what you heard, some people say that they accidentally took a wrong direction at some point at the wrong cave. Sorry, not the wrong cave, in the wrong canyon. Some people are like, oh, they actually were meaning to take this particular one, this, and this. All sorts of things. Not really the focus of this one, but we do remember, if you guys know the story at all, we do remember that God was leading them by a pillar of fire at night, and a pillar of cloud during the day. So that's something that is sort of interesting. They got led down southwards, well, actually south and east. So with that said, though, they go and they go and they go, and eventually they get to the Red Sea. And this, of course, is not the full extent of the Red Sea. It's just one of the little, I'm going to call it an inlet of the Red Sea, if you will. So it's labeled as the Hepropo, Little Sea, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, I can't say it whatsoever because that's too many letters that are just terrible. Forgive me, guys, for that one. But as you guys can see, it's, again, not the full Red Sea. This is something a lot of people agree on, it was not the full extent of the Red Sea, and it does have a lot of different reasons for that. A lot of people agree on the particular spot that they crossed the Red Sea as being roughly where this map actually shows it, which is pretty stinking cool. With that said, though, we have them cross, and it's pretty cool. Eventually they go through, they basically follow the coastline of the Sinai Peninsula, and they get to something that I think is quite interesting. So guys, as you can see on the southern end of Mount Sinai here, so let me just point on the map. It should be roughly down here-ish. Forgive me for that, but I'm going to circle it actually to make it really easy for you guys. But right here we see Horeb, which is Mount Horeb, and then to the southeast of that you have Sinai, so Mount Sinai. So interestingly enough, if you hop on the internet and you look it up, Mount Sinai versus Mount Horeb, so some people say they're the same mountain, other people say they're separate mountains, but it's interesting because if you look at the actual potential reasons for these names, Mount Sinai potentially has its name derived from the name of Sin, which was a ancient Mesopotamian deity or god that was sort of related to the moon, and I guess was a moon, depending on what you want to call it. But Horeb is more in reference to the sun, and it's all that sort of stuff. So it's interesting that you have Mount Sinai on one end of this little mountain range here, and then Mount Horeb on the other side. But something else that I'd really like to point out, guys, is you have these two locations, but then to the northeast, you have St. Catherine. So St. Catherine's, guys, a little bit of history on this before I dive into this too much further. So she is St. Catherine of Alexandria. So fun story on her, not diving into that much, but it's really worth looking up this guys. I'm actually going to address it a little bit more, but St. Catherine's, guys, she died, her remains were found, and where they were found, they were actually not far from the site of a monastery. I don't recall for sure if the monastery was before or after. I think it was after the remains were found, but no, it was yeah, her remains were found after the monastery, I think is how it went. I don't remember for sure, sorry guys. But this monastery, guys, is actually in an area called St. Catherine's, and this place, guys, is where a lot of people accept and believe that this is where Moses got the Ten Commandments from God. They believe this is where everything happened. It's really cool. So you have a monastery there, you have a town, and if you guys look it up on Google Earth, actually, you can peruse around there. You could see the particular location of the city. You could see that in relation to the monastery, in relation to Mount Sinai, all that sort of stuff. It's really cool. You guys could look it up yourselves. Not really the focus of this video. We're just going to be diving through things a little bit. But with that said, it's interesting that they have St. Catherine's not right next to where this map says is Mount Horeb and Mount Sinai. It's interesting because these two mountains are further to the south, and it's not just like, oh, it's just a little bit off, but it's like miles and miles off, which I think is quite interesting. It's not because with the St. Catherine and Mount Catherine, so St. Catherine as the city, St. Catherine as the monastery, and then Mount Catherine, all those are right around St. Catherine. Interestingly enough, though, if we're going off of the key of this particular map, it looks like, just a rough estimation, it looks like we're about 20 British miles off from the actual location, which again is quite interesting because that puts us a little bit closer to El Tor, and that's again, not too close to Mount Catherine. So I think that's just something that's rather interesting. Something else that I think is very interesting, guys. So there's actually some disagreement about where the real Mount Horeb and Mount Sinai is, because interestingly enough, there's a mountain in Saudi Arabia called Jabal al-Laz, as in Mountain of the Law. Why is it called that? Because that's where other people believe that's where the laws of God were given to Moses. It's very interesting that these are two different things on two different peninsulas, because if you guys are looking on the map again, you have where all these things happened on the Sinai Peninsula, but then you have the Arabian Peninsula further to the east, where it doesn't say they went down here. So it's interesting because it's like, okay, so either this old map from 1835 is incorrect, or they're incorrect, or this or this or this, when honestly, guys, if we're being completely real, there's a good chance that we don't know the exact route that Moses took at this point, because that was a couple years ago, and it was a couple years before this map here was made. So it's just interesting to compare these sorts of things. However, there are some theories about the Mountain of the Law, because Mountain of the Law, Jabal al-Laz, that one's burned on the top. And if we think about the Bible at all, and we look at some of the things that are around Jabal al-Laz, it's like, that seems like an awfully likely candidate for what the actual mountain was. It's very interesting to consider. Of course, I'm going to have some people complain about me saying this in the chat. I would actually love to hear you guys comment on it and drop comments below about what you guys personally think about all this, because it is a rather interesting thing that you have two separate mountains that are dozens and dozens of miles away from each other that are both potentially the correct mountain. Of course, luckily, both these mountains are both in Arabia, that whole area, so it still is potentially in the whole realm of possibility. I mean, it's not like somewhere in like Japan where it's like, wait, what? No, that's not right, my dude. They did not go that far. I know they were wandering for 40 years, but they didn't go that far. But that is something that is sort of cool to think about, compare, and again, guys, I'd love to hear you guys weigh in. But with that said, as we're looking down here, we can see that they, according to this map, took a beeline basically northwards. And as we're going northwards, though, I'd like to point out that there's something a little further east of the route that they took. And that is the grotto or cave of Moses. I've never heard this particular phrase before, but if you think what I'm thinking, the grotto or cave of Moses sounds an awful lot like where you would have had Moses getting the where Moses went to the cave and saw the burning bush. So it's interesting because with the whole St. Catherine's thing, they actually say that they have the burning bush in within the walls of the monastery, whereas this one, this grotto or cave of Moses, that is actually to the northeast by a good chunk. Actually, it's the northeast, which again, it's quite interesting, and it's not just a couple miles away. We're talking, according to the thing right here, I think we're talking about 30 British miles away from it, which is a pretty good distance. So I think that's quite interesting. It's something that might not change your entire view of the Bible and world history, but it is something that's like, oh, that's quite interesting that these are totally separate spots. I don't know exactly where the guy that made this particular Bible commentary got all of his data to do these particular maps, but it is very interesting to see all the different things that he made sure to mark down and the things that he didn't mark down. Personally, I wish I could have found more data on this guy when I was doing my research for this video, but I'm personally curious if he even went to these locations at the time, because guys, if you guys know anything about history, you know that the Ottoman Empire was actually thriving and kicking at this point in time. I mean, there were some issues in the early 1800s for the Ottoman Empire, and we do see in the latter parts of the Ottoman Empire that it was getting closer and closer to collapse. That's why when they sort of got cut apart by the British and French empires and all that sort of stuff at the end of World War I, that's why you didn't see as much of a uprising from an organized Ottoman state as you could have if the Ottoman Empire was at its full strength. Because guys, if you know anything, you know the Ottoman Empire was an insanely powerful force to be reckoned with back in the day. So it is interesting, though, all that sort of stuff about, did he even go here to look at these particular sites, or is he just basing his things on his info on other sources? Something interesting, talking about other sources, the St. Catherine's Monastery was founded in about the year 500 or so. And I can get to the actual year, but it's not too important. It was founded about, let's say, 1,500 years before now, so about 1,300 years before this particular book was made and this map was made. So it's interesting also to consider that, because it's like, okay, so The info this guy has probably was at least somewhat influenced by the information from the St. Catherine's people, but they were influenced by something that happened. Sorry, they were basing things off of something that happened still thousands of years before they even made their monastery. So it's very interesting because it's like, what information were they going off of? What information were they able to pass on? Where did they believe they heard, or where did they get the information to believe these certain things? It's very interesting just to conceptualize, because it's like, if you read the actual accounts of Exodus, I mean, you do get plenty of landmarks read off to you, but there are a lot of other things that are like, where exactly is that particular landmark? Because it doesn't have that name anymore. And guys, remember what I just mentioned about the Ottoman Empire. They were alive and kicking at this time. They were doing a lot of different things. Fortunately, you had St. Catherine's Monastery and that sort of stuff. It was actually protected at this point of time because of Prophet Muhammad back in the day. I guess he wrote a letter and said that that area would be safe because Islam and all that was actually founded from sort of as an offshoot of an Abrahamic religion, i.e. you have Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. They are all Abrahamic religions because they all trace their sources, their lineage back to Abraham. So it's interesting that that area was protected, but again, it sort of makes you wonder what has happened over these past few thousand years. I mean, I know of plenty of people who are telling stories that they lose track of the story after like 3 days. So think about something like this. Thousands of years have passed, and you have actual biblical account, which is, depending on what you believe about the Bible, totally accurate or totally flawed. I believe all scriptures God breathed and is therefore, God breathed it, it's accurate. So that's what I personally view things as, and a lot of Christians do. But it's really interesting to sort of weigh that against these sort of maps that you're seeing. And there are a lot of maps that I've seen of other people saying, oh, this is the route they actually took. Oh no, it's this route, this one. But for me, again, guys, I think it's really cool seeing this particular map from the 1800s and what this guy personally believes that they took. So with that said, though, we're past the Grotto of Moses, and we're going up, and we see that they get into the Desert of Zin, and then they dip back down and they go towards Petra. So Petra, if you guys know anything about that, is mentioned in the Bible a couple of times. Very cool city. I honestly would love to visit it at some point just because it's so stinking beautiful. But it's interesting because after that you see that they go up and northwards, and eventually they get into the Promised Land. And obviously, guys, if you look at this particular map, it's like, there's no way that actually took 40 years. And you hear a lot of people actually say this is one of their issues with the Bible, but I do want to point out the reason why they took 40 years was they did mess up, and God, as a punishment, didn't let them all enter the Promised Land for 40 years because he wanted to have everyone die out of the generation that was rebelling against him, essentially. Only 2 people were able to make it in. Caleb, hey, I know a guy with that name. And obviously you have the leader of Israel who ended up taking over from Moses. What was his name? Anyone? No? Come on, Joshua won the Battle of Jericho. Come on, guys. I'm ashamed. But with that said, though, guys, it's fun because, as you can see, they're going up and they're going up. And, oh, what is that right there? I don't see it. I don't see it. Where's Jericho? I'm getting scammed, guys. I thought I saw it earlier, and now I feel like I'm blind because I definitely thought I saw it. But again, we do see that they enter into the Promised Land. And, okay, now I'm actually worried. Where'd Jericho go? Am I crazy? I'm crazy, guys. Dun dun dun. Alright, I'm sorry. I let you guys astray for a little bit, but yeah, Joshua won the Battle of Jericho because all that fun stuff. Great story. But as we can see, guys, they get into Israel, and as you can see, they come up on the eastern side of the Dead Sea, which is actually correct. If you guys read through the biblical accounts, you have the half-tribe of Manasseh that wants to stay on that side of things, on that side of the Jordan River, all that sort of stuff, which causes a big issue. And they're like, no, we're not, like, betraying God. We just like this land here. We'll help you guys do your thing. We just like this land. This will be our half, you know. So that's something that's very interesting. So with all that said, though, guys, that is that particular map just of the route that the Israelites took from Egypt into the Promised Land. And I'm probably going to cry to myself because I can't find Jericho. There's Jericho. There we go. I know I saw it, guys. As you can see, though, Jericho is at the top of the Dead Sea. Here's a photo of it. I promise it's on the map right there. I'm not crazy, I did see it, just couldn't find it in time for that. But it's very interesting though, guys, comparing all the different things that we know nowadays against what people believed back then, or comparing what they thought they knew or did know back then that we now have misconstrued and have messed up. It's very interesting looking at all that sort of stuff. Besides all that, something else that I really love about this map is, yes, I mentioned that they went to the Desert of Zin. If you guys look at the other parts of this map, I'm not going to show you guys little bits of every single little thing, but it's interesting because you see Midian, which is down towards the Red Sea, and wait a second, Midian, we know that name. Yeah, that's very interesting, and I personally would love to see a little bit more explanation about, is Midian related to the House of Midian, all that sort of stuff. Very interesting. Obviously, I don't think that area has that name today. I can actually zoom in on Google Maps. I actually have it open to help me out with this one, but I don't see anything with Midian as the name in this particular area, which is quite interesting. But guys, it's really cool seeing all this sort of stuff. And with that said, back to what I was saying earlier, some of the cool stuff that I've enjoyed about this map, and guys, I've had this book for a little while now, but it's still like something I keep on opening up just to look at. But something I enjoy is you can see the Amalekites, you can see the land of Edom, you can see the wilderness of Kedemoth, sorry, the Moabites. You can have all the different tribes that the Israelites took this land from as well. It's very interesting seeing all this sort of stuff, and you can also see the different names that the Dead Sea has. So it's the Asphaltic Lake, which I've never heard of, the Dead Sea, which I have heard of, and the Salt Sea, which I've also heard of. But it's interesting seeing all the different names that some of these things have had besides just what we are aware of. So with that said and done though, guys, I hope this video was enjoyable. If it was, please be sure to hit the like button, because it is fun going through these antique books. It's fun sharing the stuff that's in some of these books, because let's face it, not a lot of people are going to be able to get their hands on this book otherwise and hear what this book has to offer otherwise. So it is very fun going through these things and sharing these things. So with that said, if you guys did like that, please be sure to drop a comment on it. I have a couple other videos coming out on this book. I'm going to make a couple short videos on it as well, just because, again, guys, it's so stinking cool. But again, thank you for watching. If you guys did like it, please be sure to check out one of the other videos. Again, I'm making more videos on this particular book, this particular I don't know if I'm going to go through the other commentaries I have, but I know I'll be going through this one some more, just because, for me, the entire Exodus story is so stinking cool, and I just love that entire side of things. So with that said, though, guys, again, thank you for watching. Please be sure to check out one of the other videos, and I'll see you in the next one.